John Mason had always dreamed of owning a farm. For years he worked tirelessly in the city, saving every penny, imagining a life away from the hustle and bustle of urban living. He longed for peace, wide-open spaces, and the satisfaction of working the land. Finally, after years of hard work and sacrifice, his dream was within reach. He found the perfect farm, a beautiful, quiet piece of land on the outskirts of town. The property seemed like a hidden treasure. It was surrounded by trees with a charming little house that needed some repairs but had the potential to become a cozy home. There was an old barn, perhaps a little worn by time but sturdy and full of character. The land stretched far and wide with fields ready for planting, rolling hills in the distance, and a peaceful lake at the edge of the property. John could already imagine himself waking up early in the morning, breathing in fresh air and enjoying the simple pleasures of farm life. What really caught his attention was the price. It was far cheaper than any other farm he had looked at. This was a once-in-a-lifetime deal, and John wasted no time. Without hesitation, he signed the paperwork, handed over the money, and officially became the owner of the farm. He was excited, maybe even a little too excited. He could already feel the weight of the city lifting from his shoulders, and the idea of living a simpler life was all he could think about. The day after he finalized the purchase, John drove out to his new farm. His car rumbled down a dirt road that wound through tall trees. The silence was strange. No cars honking, no noise of busy streets. Just the chirping of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. He felt a sense of relief as he reached the end of the road and saw the farmhouse in the distance, its windows glowing softly in the afternoon sun. But when John arrived at the farm, things weren't quite as he expected. Standing at the front of the house, there were 3 women. At first, he thought they might be neighbors, come to welcome him to the area. But as he got closer, something about them felt unusual. The 3 women were standing on the porch, staring at him with strange, unreadable expressions. They were tall, much taller than ordinary women, and their presence was somehow intimidating. The woman in the middle was the tallest, wearing a long, loose dress that seemed to flow with the wind. The other 2 women flanked her, both equally towering, their gazes fixed on John as if they were waiting for something. John slowed his car, unsure of what to do. He rolled down the window and waved, trying to make light of the situation. "Hello there," he called out. "I'm John Mason. I just bought the farm." The tallest woman stepped forward. She had a calm, almost regal presence, but her eyes, those eyes were intense, as if she could see right through him. "You belong to us now," she said, her voice deep, powerful, and strangely unsettling. John blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. He chuckled awkwardly. "Excuse me?" The woman didn't smile. Instead, she repeated, "You belong to us now." John's heart skipped a beat. There was something about her tone, something that made him feel as though this wasn't a joke. The other 2 women stood still, watching him with silent intensity. They didn't speak, but their presence was enough to make John feel uneasy. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. I just bought the farm," John said, trying to make sense of what was happening. This was also strange. The last thing he expected when coming to his new home was to be confronted by 3 women, standing on the porch as if they had been waiting for him. The woman who had spoken earlier took a slow step toward him, her eyes never leaving his. "The land you have purchased is ours," she explained. "We have been here for centuries. The farm belongs to us, and now that you are its owner, you belong to us too." John's brow furrowed in confusion. He glanced around, wondering if this was some kind of prank. Maybe they were actors or part of some weird local tradition. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I bought the farm legally. It's mine now," he said, trying to stand his ground. The woman's gaze softened just slightly, but there was no warmth in her expression. "You misunderstand. The farm is not just land. It is tied to us, tied to something much older than you can understand." She took another step forward, her voice quiet but firm. "You've signed the papers, and now you must honor the agreement. You are bound to us and to this place." John felt his stomach turn. Something about the way she spoke made him feel as though he was in the presence of something ancient, something beyond his comprehension. His excitement about the farm was starting to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. "I think I need to speak with someone about this," he said, his voice shaky. "Maybe there's been some mistake." The woman shook her head, and for the first time a faint smile touched her lips, though it didn't reach her eyes. "There is no mistake. You will learn in time. For now, you must begin your work here. On the land we have shared for so long. John's mind was racing. He didn't know what to make of all this. These women were so strange, their words cryptic and unsettling. They weren't acting like normal people, and their size alone made him feel small and powerless. He glanced around, hoping to find some sign of normalcy in his new home, but nothing seemed right. Before he could respond, the woman stepped back and motioned toward the house. "Come," she said softly. "There is much for you to learn. The farm is waiting." Reluctantly, John stepped out of the car and walked toward the house, unsure of what was happening but feeling an undeniable pull to follow. The three women turned and began walking inside, their long strides matching the rhythm of the wind. John followed them, his mind racing, unsure of what kind of strange, mysterious world he had just entered. The door to the farmhouse creaked open, and John stepped inside, knowing that his life had just changed in ways he could never have imagined. John Mason stood in the doorway of the farmhouse, his heart pounding. The three women had led him inside without saying another word. The house was small, but its age was evident in every creak of the wooden floorboards and every crack in the plaster. It smelled of dust and old memories, and John couldn't shake the feeling that he had stepped into a place that had been waiting for him. Waiting for much longer than he could comprehend. The three women were already seated around a large wooden table in the center of the room, their eyes still fixed on him. The atmosphere was thick with silence, and John could feel the weight of their presence in the air. They made no attempt to break the quiet, as if they were giving him time to gather his thoughts. But the more he thought about the strange encounter, the more questions piled up in his mind. What was it that they meant by, "You belong to us now"? And why had they said it with such certainty? Finally, the tallest woman, the one who had spoken first, motioned for John to sit down at the table. Her name, she had told him earlier, was Althea. The other two women were named Elysia and Vera. Each of them had a calm but unyielding presence that seemed to make the room feel even smaller than it already was. John hesitated but sat down, still unsure of what he was walking into. Althea, who seemed to be the leader of the three, folded her hands in front of her, her long fingers moving in a slow, deliberate rhythm. She looked at him for a long time before speaking. "John," she began, her voice soft but steady, "there is much you do not know, but you will soon understand. The land you have bought is not just land. It is tied to us and to something far older than you can imagine." John opened his mouth to protest, but Althea raised her hand, signaling for him to remain silent. Her gaze was intense, and he found himself listening, unable to look away. "This land, this farm, has been ours for centuries. We are its guardians, and it is our duty to ensure that it remains protected. But there is more to it than that. The farm is alive. It has a soul, and it has its own rules. And those rules, well, they are not something you can ignore." John's mind was reeling. "What do you mean the land has a soul?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is just a farm. I've been working on farms all my life. It's just dirt and crops. What are you talking about?" Althea looked at him as if she were patiently waiting for him to understand, though it was clear that this was not going to be an easy task. "The farm you've bought was never just a piece of land. It was built on ancient promises, on an agreement made long before you or anyone you know was born. Long ago, this land was sacred, and the people who lived here respected the earth in ways that modern society has long forgotten. Over the years, as people came and went, the bond between the land and the guardians grew stronger. And when the time came, when the land changed hands once again, someone would have to take the place of the last keeper. And that person is you, John." John's head spun. The idea that this farm had any kind of sacred meaning was difficult to accept. He had only bought it because it seemed like a peaceful retreat from the stresses of the city, not because it was part of some ancient tradition or mystery. "But why me?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why did you choose me? I'm just a regular guy. I don't know anything about ancient pacts or guardianship." The three women exchanged a look as if John had asked the most obvious question in the world. "We didn't choose you, John," Elysia said softly. "The land did. It always chooses its next keeper. It's not something that can be avoided no matter what you do. Once you sign the papers, once you become the owner, the land's claim is complete." "But I didn't know," John protested. "I didn't understand what I was getting into." "How could I have known?" "You couldn't," Vera spoke up for the first time. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, as if she were disappointed in him for not already understanding. Most people who come here never do. The land doesn't show itself to them. It waits until it is time. John was still trying to wrap his head around it all. So, what happens now? What do you want from me? Althea's gaze softened slightly, but there was still a seriousness in her eyes. Now you must learn. We will teach you how to care for the land, how to understand it. It is not just about planting crops or fixing fences. The farm has its own needs, its own rhythms. You must listen, John. If you do not, the land will turn against you. John felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean, turn against me? Elysia spoke again, her voice more gentle this time. The land has its own way of taking care of itself. If you disrespect it, if you fail to honor its needs, it will punish you. The soil will grow barren. The crops will wither. The animals will die. And in the end, you will leave, just like all the others who couldn't understand. John shuddered. He couldn't imagine a farm like that. He had always thought of farmland as something that was simple, something that required hard work. But with enough effort, it would give back. But now it seemed there was something far deeper at work. You will have time to adjust, Althea continued, but not much. We will help you, guide you. But it is your responsibility to learn the ways of the farm. The land has a memory, and it will remember whether or not you honor its ways. The room was silent for a long moment, and John tried to digest everything they had said. It was a lot to take in, but there was one thing he knew for sure: he couldn't leave. The idea of walking away from this farm after everything that had been said felt impossible. No matter how strange it all seemed, this was now his life. The farm had chosen him, and there was no going back. As the women rose from the table, John followed their lead, his mind spinning with questions and confusion. They moved toward the door as if it was time to begin. You have much to learn, Althea said once more. And we will be here to teach you. But the land will be watching too. It is always watching. John took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He wasn't sure what awaited him on this strange new path, but he had no choice but to follow it. Days passed in a strange blur for John Mason. The initial shock of meeting the three towering women and hearing their cryptic words about the farm began to wear off. But their presence lingered in every corner of the property. Althea, Elysia, and Vera didn't let him forget for a second that the land had chosen him. And now he was part of something bigger than himself. They watched him as he worked, offering quiet guidance, but also making it clear that he was expected to follow the rules he still didn't fully understand. The work on the farm was nothing like what John had imagined. Back in the city, he had worked on small farms before, doing the usual chores, planting, watering, and harvesting crops. But here it was different. There were no simple tasks. Every action seemed to have a deeper meaning. Every decision carried a weight that John could not quite understand. One morning, after an exhausting day of tilling the soil, John sat on the porch of the farmhouse, wiping the sweat from his brow. It was early autumn, and the cool breeze provided some relief after the long hours under the sun. The land stretched before him, vast and quiet, but there was something unsettling about its stillness. The women were nowhere to be seen, and for the first time since his arrival, John felt a sense of loneliness, a feeling that he wasn't quite sure he belonged here. As he sat there, lost in thought, he suddenly noticed something strange. The grass in the field, which had been dry and withered earlier in the season, was now beginning to grow back. The plants seemed to be stretching toward the sky, their green leaves glistening as if they had been nourished overnight. He blinked, wondering if he was imagining things. It couldn't have grown that quickly. Hadn't he just been in the field yesterday working the soil? And yet, it was as if the land had suddenly come alive in a way that defied all reason. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Althea, Elysia, and Viera approaching, walking as gracefully as ever, their long strides moving in perfect unison. They did not seem tired from their long day of work, as if the land itself provided them with an endless supply of energy. Their presence was commanding, as always, but today John noticed something different about them. They seemed more powerful than before, as if their connection to the land had grown stronger, more tangible. You're noticing it, aren't you? Althea's voice was soft, but there was a hint of satisfaction in it. She stood beside him, looking out at the field with an air of knowing. John nodded slowly. The grass. It wasn't like this yesterday. It's growing so fast, Elysia smiled faintly. The land responds to us, she said. And to you now, too. It's alive, John. It listens to everything we do, everything we think. When we work together, it thrives. John was stunned. He had always thought of land as something passive, something that simply needed care and attention to produce crops. But now it seemed as if the farm had a mind of its own, reacting to his every move. But I don't understand, he said. How can it grow like that? It doesn't make sense, Vera spoke up, her voice low and steady. The land doesn't follow the rules of the world, you know. It operates on a different level, on ancient rhythms that most people have forgotten. When the farm is in balance, when it's treated with respect, it can flourish in ways that seem impossible. John looked at the three women, his mind struggling to comprehend what they were saying. It was hard to accept, hard to believe, but there was no denying what he was seeing. The field, the crops, even the trees in the distance. All of it seemed to hum with life as if the land itself was breathing. You see, Althea continued, the land chooses its keeper carefully. It knows when someone is worthy. That's why it responds to you now. It's testing you, just as it tested us before. John's confusion deepened. Testing me? How? What do I need to do? You will know, Elysia said, her voice carrying a calm certainty. In time, you will feel the connection more strongly. You will understand the land's needs just as we do. The soil, the plants, the animals, they all have their own voices if you know how to listen. John looked down at his hands. Dirt caked into the creases of his palms. It seemed impossible. How could he, a man who had lived his entire life in a busy city, suddenly be expected to hear the land's voice? And yet, in some strange way, he could feel it, like a distant hum just beneath the surface, a pull that beckoned him closer to something he couldn't fully grasp. The women didn't wait for him to process all of this. Instead, they led him back to the barn, where they had already prepared for the next task. There was no explanation, no gentle easing into this new life. They simply expected him to keep up, to do what was asked of him. John followed them without question, though his mind raced with uncertainty. For the next few days, the work became more intense. John was expected to help with everything, planting new crops, tending to the animals, and even repairing parts of the barn that had fallen into disrepair. But it wasn't the work that was so different. It was the way the women seemed to guide him, as if they knew exactly what to do and when to do it. They didn't speak much, but their actions were enough to show John that they had a deep understanding of the farm's needs. As he worked, he began to notice things he hadn't seen before. The way the air felt thicker at times, as if charged with energy. The way the animals seemed to act differently around the women, as if they knew who they were. The land was full of small, subtle signs, and John found himself more attuned to them with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, John sat down beside the lake at the edge of the farm. He had finished his chores earlier than usual and decided to take a moment for himself. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light across the water. The sounds of the animals settling in for the night created a peaceful rhythm in the background. But as John stared at the water, he felt a strange sensation, a pull deep in his chest, like the earth was calling to him. Without thinking, he stood and began walking toward the fields, following the silent pull that seemed to come from the very land itself. As he walked, he felt the ground beneath his feet shift slightly, as if the earth was alive, adjusting to his every step. It was both exhilarating and frightening, as if he were connected to something far beyond his understanding. The three women appeared from the shadows, walking silently toward him. Their eyes met his, and for the first time John felt that they were not simply watching him, they were guiding him. The land is showing you, Althea said quietly. It's teaching you how to listen. It will be difficult at first, but you will understand in time. The land will never let you go once you've felt its call. John nodded, his heart racing. The strange pull he felt was unmistakable. It was as if the land had claimed him, just as the women had said. And despite the fear that lingered in his chest, a part of him felt drawn to it as if he were meant to be here, meant to understand its power. As the sun dipped below the horizon, John stood at the edge of the field, feeling the weight of the land's energy surround him. He knew that he was no longer just a man working a farm. He was a part of something much bigger, something that was both ancient and alive. And as he stood there, he understood one thing for certain. His life had changed forever. The days on the farm began to blend together. each one feeling more surreal than the last. John Mason woke up each morning with the weight of his new life pressing down on him. The strange pull of the land was no longer just a fleeting feeling. It was a constant presence guiding his every step. The work on the farm was hard, yes, but there was something different about it now. Something deeper. The land, the animals, the plants, they were all alive in ways John had never imagined. And he too was becoming part of this living, breathing world. Althea, Elysia, and Vera continued to teach him, their presence always nearby. At first, John had struggled to keep up with their work, feeling like an outsider. But over time, he began to understand the rhythms of the farm. He could feel the soil's needs, sense when the plants needed water or when the animals were restless. The land had a language of its own, and John was slowly learning how to listen to it. The three women never spoke much, but their guidance was in everything they did. Their every movement seemed to be in perfect harmony with the land. Althea was always calm and patient, guiding him through tasks with quiet assurance. Elysia was more energetic, always moving quickly from one task to another, her sharp eyes catching every detail. Vera, on the other hand, was quiet and observant, watching John from a distance as if she were waiting for something, waiting for him to reach a deeper understanding. It was Vera who first noticed the change in him. One afternoon, after a long day of work, John was sitting on the porch staring out at the fields. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the land, and for the first time John felt a sense of peace. The land was at rest, the animals quiet, and the air smelled fresh and clean. It was as though everything had finally fallen into place. Vera approached him slowly, her footsteps almost silent on the wooden floor of the porch. She sat down beside him without saying a word, her eyes following his gaze out over the land. John could feel the weight of her presence beside him, but for once it wasn't unsettling. It felt comforting. "You've changed," Vera said, her voice soft but sure. "I can see it in you. The land is becoming a part of you." John looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" Vera smiled faintly. "When you first arrived, you were uncertain. You didn't understand the land, and the land didn't understand you. But now it's different. You've learned how to listen. You've learned how to work with the land, not against it, and the land has accepted you." John swallowed hard, feeling a sense of awe wash over him. He had never thought of it that way. He had always thought of the farm as just a place to work, a place to find peace away from the city. But now it felt like more than that. The land was alive, and he was a part of it. "It's strange," John said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "I never imagined any of this. I thought I was just buying a farm. I didn't know it would be like this." Vera nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Most people don't understand. They come here looking for a simple life, but they don't realize that this land has a power of its own. It chooses its keepers, and once you are chosen, you are bound to it. The bond is unbreakable. The land will never let you go." John's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What happens if I try to leave?" Vera's gaze was steady, her eyes never leaving his. "You cannot leave, John, not now. The land has claimed you. It has chosen you as its keeper, just as it chose us. The bond is strong. If you try to leave, the land will pull you back. It will make you stay." John shuddered at her words. He had felt the pull of the land before, but hearing it spoken out loud made it feel even more real. He couldn't leave. No matter what, he was bound to this place, to these women, and to the farm. It was a truth that settled deep in his chest, a truth he couldn't escape. "But I didn't know," John said, his voice almost pleading. "I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know it would be like this." Vera turned to look at him, her expression softening. "You didn't have to know. The land doesn't ask for permission. It just chooses, and when it does, the keeper must accept. You have accepted, John, and now you are one of us." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. John felt a deep sense of acceptance, but also a tinge of fear. He had thought that owning the farm would bring him freedom, but now it felt like a chain that tied him to the land, to the women, and to something much larger than himself. "I didn't want this," John whispered, almost to himself. "I wanted a quiet life. I wanted to leave everything behind to start fresh, but this is different." Vera didn't answer right away. Instead, she simply placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and comforting. "It's not about what you want anymore, John. It's about what the land needs. And you are part of that. You can't escape it, and you shouldn't try. The land will take care of you just as it takes care of all of us. John sat in silence, his mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts. He couldn't deny what Vera was saying. The bond was real, and he was already a part of it. The land had chosen him, and there was no turning back now. Over the next few days, John's connection to the farm deepened even further. He could feel the pulse of the land beneath his feet, the rhythm of the seasons and the cycles of nature. The soil, the plants, the animals, they all seemed to speak to him in ways he couldn't explain. He understood their needs now, just as Althea, Elysia, and Vera had said he would. And with that understanding came a sense of peace, a feeling that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. But there were moments, small moments, when John still wondered what his life would have been like if he had never bought the farm. What if he had stayed in the city, gone on with his life, never knowing about the ancient power that lay beneath the land? It was a question he could never answer. The past was gone, and the future was now shaped by the farm, the women, and the bond that held him to this place. One evening, as he stood in the field, watching the sun dip below the horizon, John finally understood. The land had claimed him, yes, but it had also given him something he hadn't expected: purpose. He wasn't just a man working on a farm anymore. He was part of something much larger, something that stretched back through generations. The bond was unbreakable, and for better or for worse, John was now a part of it. As he turned to walk back to the farmhouse, he felt the weight of that truth settle into his bones. The farm had chosen him, and there was no escaping it. But for the first time, he didn't want to escape. He had found his place here, and no matter what came next, he was ready to embrace it. The days on the farm passed slowly, each one blending into the next until the distinction between past and present began to fade. John Mason had come to the farm seeking escape, seeking peace, but instead, he had found something far more complicated, an ancient bond that tied him to the land, to the women, and to something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. It was as if his life had become intertwined with the very soil beneath his feet, and there was no way out. He had been chosen, and he now accepted that this was where he belonged. The women, Althea, Elysia, and Vera, never ceased to be a constant presence in his life. At first he had been overwhelmed by their power, by their knowledge of the land, and by their ability to move in harmony with the earth. But now, as time wore on, John found himself becoming more and more like them. He could feel the land's pulse under his skin, hear the quiet whisper of the trees in the wind, and understand the needs of the crops and animals before they were ever voiced. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the farm, John sat at the edge of the fields, staring out at the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, and the air was still, the sounds of the evening animals beginning to emerge. He had worked long hours that day, repairing the old barn, tending to the crops, and checking on the animals. It had become second nature now. He no longer had to think about the work. It was as if his body knew exactly what to do, as if the land itself guided his hands. Althea appeared beside him, her tall figure casting a long shadow as she stood silently for a moment, looking out at the same view. The others, Elysia and Vera, were nowhere to be seen, but John had learned that they didn't need to be nearby to watch over him. They were always present, even when they were not physically there. He had learned to sense their presence in the land, in the air, and the rustling of the leaves. "Are you ready?" Althea's voice was calm, as always, but there was something in her tone that made John turn to her, a flicker of anticipation in his chest. He nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what she meant. "Ready for what?" She smiled, a rare expression that softened her usual serious demeanor. "You have done well, John. You have learned the ways of the farm, and now it's time for you to fully understand what it means to be one of us." John felt his heart race a little. The connection between him and the land, the bond he had formed with it, had grown stronger than ever before, but he knew that there was still so much he didn't understand. There were still questions, things he hadn't learned, and mysteries he hadn't unraveled. "What do you mean?" he asked again, his voice uncertain. Althea gazed out at the fields, her eyes soft but distant, as if seeing something beyond the horizon. When the farm chooses its keeper, it is not just a bond between the person and the land. It is a bond that ties you to the land's very essence, its history, its power, and now it is time for you to become a part of that power. It's time for you to embrace the role you've been given. John's mind swirled with confusion. He had worked hard on the farm, he had respected the land, and he had learned its ways. But what did Althea mean by becoming a part of the power? Seeing his confusion, Althea continued, "The land is alive, John. It has its own life force. And when you accept your place here, when you truly become one with the land, you tap into that life force. You become part of its rhythm, its cycles. The land will feed you, and you will feed it in return. It is a relationship, a symbiotic bond. The farm lives through you just as you live through the farm." John stared at her, struggling to understand. "You mean I'm becoming like you and the others?" Althea nodded slowly. "Yes, in a way you are. You will feel the land's energy coursing through you. It will change you. But this is not something to fear. It is what you were meant to do. The farm chose you because it knew you had the potential to understand its true nature." John felt a shiver run through him. He had always thought of himself as a regular man, just someone who wanted a peaceful life away from the city. But now he was part of something much more powerful, something that had existed long before he ever set foot on the farm. The realization was both humbling and frightening. How could he, a man who had spent most of his life disconnected from nature, now be a part of this ancient force? How could he, someone who had been a stranger to this land just months ago, now be so deeply connected to it? Althea seemed to sense his fear. "Don't be afraid, John. This is not something that will take away from you. It will make you stronger, more connected to the earth than you ever imagined possible. It will bring you peace in a way that no city ever could." John looked down at his hands, which were now rough and calloused from days of labor. He had worked hard, yes, but it was more than that. The land had changed him, had shaped him into something new. And in some strange way, he was starting to feel that peace Althea spoke of, the kind of peace he had searched for his whole life. "I think I understand," John said slowly, his voice quiet but steady. "I felt it, the pull, the connection. It's like the land is alive, like it's calling me. And now I understand why. I'm a part of it." Althea's eyes softened, a hint of pride in her gaze. "Exactly. And now it is time for you to fully embrace your place here. This is your home now, John, and you will protect it just as we have protected it for centuries. The bond is unbreakable, and with it comes great responsibility." John felt a surge of something within him, something powerful, something that resonated deep within his soul. He was ready to fully accept this strange, unbreakable bond that tied him to the farm, to the land, and to the women who had shown him its secrets. "How do I begin?" he asked, his voice stronger now, filled with resolve. Althea smiled, her expression calm and knowing. "You've already begun. Every day you work here, every step you take, you are becoming more and more connected to the land. You are ready to walk alongside us. Together we will continue the work of protecting this place." And so, with those words, John Mason fully embraced his new life. The farm had chosen him, and now he had become one with it. He was no longer a stranger to this land. He was its keeper, its protector, its partner. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky with colors that seemed to stretch into eternity, John felt a deep sense of peace wash over him. The land was his home now, and he was part of its eternal cycle, bound to it for as long as it would have him. He was not just a man working the fields. He was the keeper of something ancient, something powerful. And in that moment he understood. He belonged here.